This is Fragmented Reality, a digital bulletin podcast designed to bust the buzzwords that dominate enterprise technology. My name is Ben Mouncer, and for this episode I take my clutch of eggs, each containing an industry buzzword, to Leigh Feaviour, Principal Solution Architect for Intelligent Automation at BT. So Leigh, do you want to crack open your first egg?
Okie dokie.
Blue one at the top there.
Start for the blue. What do we have?
Now we have
robotics.
robotics. Okay, so I think with robotics, it's obviously a term that's been around. People associate robots. It's a term that's been around for quite a while. What is your definition of robotics today?
So, well, that's a good one to come out first, given my my role is solution architect for intelligent automation, which is all about robotics. So, to me, it's about software robots, and it's about trying to see how we can use software to automate manual, repetitive activities that people do to enable those people to focus on high value work. So the software robotics in tech, you've got hardware robots as well. You've got machines in supply chains and warehouses and all sorts. So there's lots of meanings. I don't know if there's one you want to focus on.
No. I think, to be honest, I think the meaning to the outside world of robotics is probably they don't necessarily associate it straight away with robotic process automation, which is what you're talking about. But obviously, RPA software robots are incredibly important now, aren't they, in terms of the business process side of things and how companies are able to make savings and better. So I just want you to give me a bit of insight into how prevalent RPA is now in business.
Well, it's certainly a hugely growing industry within BT. We're 3 years into our automation journey using RPA, and seeing huge benefits already. And as I say, it's very much about trying to. It helps on every angle. Okay, so if we can get the repetitive tasks that people are doing today and automate those, get robots to do them. It's all data driven. As long as it's simple, repetitive, data driven, etc. We can get a robot to do it. Then the people. It's not about trying to then free those people up and reduce headcount. It's about saying, well, now those people have got more time in their day where they can focus on value-added work, dealing with their customers, doing the things that they don't get around to doing because they're managing these repetitive processes all the time. So the employee benefits because they have a more interesting job. It obviously creates jobs as well, because just developing and maintaining the robots is in itself a job. So of course it creates jobs, but the people whose jobs it's automating, it just changes them. So hopefully their experience is better because they will be doing more interesting things. Consequently, the customer experience improves because the repetitive stuff is being done behind the scenes, which leaves the people to deal with the real problems that the customer is facing, and therefore they'll get dealt with quickly and more efficiently. So basically everybody wins if we do it well.
Do you think that message that humans and software robots can coexist, do you think that's being distributed enough? Because obviously people might have a negative sort of mindset on this.
For sure, and no, I don't think it is. There's definitely a fear whenever anyone mentions robotics or RPA or whatever, and the immediate assumption is people are trying to automate my job away, which is why I was sort of at pains to say that's certainly not what we're doing, and it's not what I really see industry doing. There are companies that do try and use it as an efficiency driver. Even within BT, when we talk about our subcontract work, we can try and automate certain things to enable us to bring that work back into BT. So it's a cost saving, but it's certainly in a way that's more beneficial to the full-time employees that work for BT, because we're actually bringing work in. We're not pushing it all out to the robots. But for sure there are negative reactions, but people quickly have an allergic reaction, and it's like any change program. People have to be brought on the journey. They have to be told why not to be afraid, and then more importantly they have to be shown. We have to demonstrate that we are not about trying to reduce headcount. We're about trying to improve employee and customer experience and just doing a better job, using the human brain for what it's good at, and using software for what it's good at, and ultimately the two need to work together. So there will these robotic processes won't sit in isolation. There will still be humans at either end of them, having to deal with exceptions, having to deal with the complexities. So getting the digital workforce and the human workforce to kind of coexist and work together, that's probably the next big challenge. we're at a point now where we can automate processes, and they largely stand alone, and we need to get to that next step, which is really the people and the robots working together, activities being passed seamlessly between them. Everybody's got a robot that they talk to in the morning and say, what did you do last night? How have you got on with this activity? They hand it over, and then they pick up the exceptions. That kind of model. And yeah, that's probably next step. That's not quite where we're at yet.
Okay, so from your own experience, that's a large organisation like BT. What challenges do you face in integrating these kind of technologies? And also, looking forward, how essential do you think they'll be to the function of this, the whole organisation?
Yeah. So integrating RPA is very easy. In a way, that's its challenge. So we can deploy RPA very quickly. It's designed to sit across the user interface, so there's not lots of complicated APIs required to be, interfaces to be coded. We literally, more often than not, use the user interface that a human would use. They just log on. The robot will then be subject to all of the same validation criteria that a person would. So all of that logic is built into the user interface. So standing up and training, if you like, a robot to be able to do the human activity is the easy part.
Culture change is
the culture change is the hard part, and also culture change for the people in the organisation. Again, going back to that fear aspect, but also knowing the right things to automate and the right things not to. So because it's easy, and because it's quick, and because it's cheap, it doesn't always necessarily mean it's the right thing to do. And if you are on the back of some big systems transformation, and you need to revamp all of your systems and rip them all out and put new ones in. At that point, if that's happening next week, putting robotics over the top of your current legacy systems is probably not the best idea, because then you're building a technical debt that you're going to have to then deal with later when all the systems change. However, if you've got some strategic systems transformation coming up soon, it doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't do robotics either. You just have to be mindful of it and say, will it pay back in terms of the hours saved and the benefit that it will bring to the organisation? Will it pay back in time before this other transformation kicks in? And if it does, then absolutely get on with it and get that benefit. But just be aware that there's going to be rework needed later on, and I think that's the key. That though, it's kind of the system architect, so to speak, that will then they push quite hard against robotics for all of those same reasons. So finding that balance and saying what should we automate and when, and yeah, I think at that point, as long as you go in eyes open and you know that you're going to have to change it in the future, it's the right thing to do.
Excellent, definitely a trend to keep an eye on in the future. Should we crack on?
Yeah.
Crack open another egg.
Go for a yellow one this time.
Yellow one this time.
Customer centricity.
Okay, customer centricity is something that we hear a lot about. How prevalent do you think customer centricity is in the strategies of either the business that you're involved in here at BT or other businesses? Because it seems to be a really strong theme at the moment.
I mean, customer centricity being put the customer at the heart of everything you do, if I can just paraphrase it, and that is central to everything that we certainly strive to do in BT. Right, so, an organisation doesn't exist for its own benefit. We have customers, and understanding that our purpose in life is to serve those customers, and ultimately by doing that well, then everybody wins. We get more customers, and the share value increases, or whatever. So it's all goodness, but customer centricity is vital. And within BT, in fact, we've one of our kind of angles within IT at the moment is human-centered design, which is all about trying to make sure everything we do, we understand what the effect is on the person at the end of the process. How will the system affect this person? How will they use it? But crucially, how will they use it, and how will the customer at the end then be treated better or worse as a result? So it's really, really core to all of our thinking at the moment in making sure that everything we do has one eye on how does that affect the customer at the end, and it's got to be positively. So
why do you think there's so much focus on that now strategically? Because surely any service company should have always been focusing on what the customer wants and needs. So why do you think it's suddenly, not suddenly, but over the last few years certainly, there seems to be a lot more messaging around this?
There does, and I think the key word you said there was should. So not everybody did, quite honestly. A lot of the time people would have a good idea. They'd say, I can't think of what it might be, but there's a service that their customer might need. So they'll then come up with a a solution designed to provide that service, and then it will go into some kind of IT design workshop or whatever, and then the focus then will be on how do we create that capability, and you've distanced it from what did the customer actually want in the first place. We've gone through 3 or 4 steps, and now we've decided on a capability. We'll develop that, and then we'll launch it, and it might bear no resemblance at the end to what the customer problem was that you were trying to solve, and that was never done intentionally, but I think that was just our methodology in the past. So all this is doing really is saying, there's other methodologies which we've not covered here, agile and the like, so we've got delivery methods that can change, but ultimately all we're saying here is do what you were doing, but make sure you've always got that spotlight on why you're doing it. So keep a focus at every stage of the life cycle on the customer, and make sure that what we're doing is going to improve their experience. So yeah, I think the only thing was not intentionally, but it just wasn't being done to that degree before. And that's why there's such a focus.
I guess a big part of that is continually speaking to your customers as well and getting feedback and learning what they want.
Sure.
Because that's the only way you can do that.
And you know what helps with that? Yeah. Robotics and automation, to give you the time to do it. So.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, shall we move on to another,
let's
egg? Let's do it.
Let's have a green one. The only green one.
What treat have we got?
Future of work.
The future of work. Okay, so I think we all understand that the way people work is changing.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think we are on that journey? Do you think we're kind of at a crossroads at the moment where you've got a generation of people who are used to working in a certain way, and then a generation of people who want to work differently? Or do you think we're at a different path?
I think bit of both. We're at a crossroads, but I think the scale of change in not just in IT, in work in general, the scale of change is such that we will always be at a crossroads. There's never a time now where we can just stand back and go, well, that was fun, wasn't it? Now let's settle into the new norm. So yes, we're at a crossroads, but it's going to continually keep changing. And I heard, I'm fearful of quoting an exact number, but I heard recently something like children at primary school today, when they are of working age, something like 80% of the jobs that exist today won't exist for them. So that does not mean that there's going to be 80% unemployment, but the work that they do will be fundamentally different to the work that their parents and their grandparents did. And I see no reason to think that their children won't be going through exactly the same thing. The pace of change in technology, which is driving everything else, is just so great. Again, so many activities that are done now will be automated through RPA or other solutions, but a lot of what people do today will still get done, but it won't get done by people. It will just get done all behind the scenes, and people are going to have to be doing different things. And as soon as we think that that's done, then what they're doing will go away. It'll be automated, it'll be redundant, it'll be whatever, and we will constantly be evolving what work looks like for the foreseeable future. I don't see an end to it.
What's your own experiences from mobile working, flexible working? Have you experienced that? To what degree have you experienced that, and do you believe that's a system that ultimately is more productive for companies? Because there's still debate around that topic, isn't there?
There is, and I can talk from my personal perspective and not on behalf of the company on this. I think it's certainly a balance. I think flexible working in general is a very good thing. There's a limit, and it requires trust, on both sides. But my experience is actually, if you trust people, they don't let you down typically. So I think as long as you keep some sensible boundaries, and you've got to have some control, and also depending on the nature of the work, there are times when actually working together in an office collaboratively, you can all get around a whiteboard, or you can all crowd around a screen or something. That is priceless. So saying everyone work from home is not the answer. Saying we can work flexibly, and we can choose where we work sometimes, and that's absolutely is a huge bonus. And as long as you get enough collaboration time to be effective, personally, I think flexible working makes you more effective, and I think typically if you trust people to work that way, they pay it back.
And from a technology perspective, that side of things is only going to develop further, so to enable a more mobile workforce.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we already have technologies that allow us to communicate far better now remotely. I don't have a phone on my desk at all. I use Skype through the computer and a headset. Obviously, there's video conferencing. That's kind of old news now. It wasn't long ago when that was really new, but that's pretty old. We have and use quite a lot in the company, kind of sort of pod video casting, with a Surface hub or something like that, so we can actually get whole meeting rooms collaborating together and then potentially dial somebody in who's then on their own at home. Honestly, it's still no substitute in those kind of meetings for having everyone in the same room, but it's helping. And those kind of technologies certainly I can see continuing to adapt. And who knows, if we're all sitting next to holograms in another 10 years' time, maybe it will be just the same as in the same meeting room, but perhaps not yet.
Yeah, okay, excellent. And I think interestingly, when you spoke about automation, you mentioned culture change, and I think when it comes to the future of work, that's also something that is important for companies to realise that to deliver the service and the way of working that employees want, they need to change culturally.
For sure, changes on both sides. Yeah. The organisation has to adapt culturally, and the employees within it have to adapt. So culture change is really important.
Okay, let's go for another egg.
Okie dokes.
3 to go.
What do we have?
We've unwrapped some
blockchain.
Okay, blockchain. One. Is the hype around blockchain justified, or is it overhyped, would you say?
Well, that's a very straightforward question with in my view, a very straightforward answer. At this point, overhyped. I can see some genuine use cases for it, particularly around, for example, potentially in supply chains, where you can use blockchain to have a complete kind of provenance history for not just whole items, but all of the components. So we talk about precious metals that have come from war-torn countries and whatnot. You can potentially use blockchain to track all of those through and know that you're dealing compliantly with those items. That said, though, my personal view is a lot of people look at blockchain and it's a solution waiting for a problem. It's like, oh, here's a great new technology, now how can we use it? And that's not the right way to adopt any technology. I think if you identify a problem and then you look around and you're hunting for solutions and blockchain happens to be part of that, then great. But my view is it's a bit of a buzzword at the moment. Lots of people are really interested in it, and I think it will have some good applications in the future. But I mean, we haven't even settled on a standard for it yet. So let's not back Betamax just yet when VHS is going to win, and then DVD comes and takes it all, or whatever. So yeah, I think there are some good use cases, but I think there's more hype than substance.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's a term you hear loads, and you hear it's definitely a buzzword, but obviously the technology itself is very complex. Do you think that there's a big gulf there between the understanding of what the technology is and how it can be applied to how much people are talking about it? Because there seems to be a bit of an imbalance.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, most people just blockchain is synonymous with cryptocurrency, and that's it. And there are obviously
interchangeable. Some people think.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing, and of course it's not. Cryptocurrency is one application of blockchain. So yeah, I don't know. I think there probably is a misunderstanding, and maybe that's why the hype is building around it, because people expect it to do more than it does. As I say, not to completely tread it into the ground, it absolutely has some good applications. And step one, let's settle on a standard. I think that, personally at least, I'd like to think we'll pick a horse and back it.
So you're saying that you think there's a lot of potential, certainly, but it needs to be a more sort of iterative.
I think the technology needs to stabilise, and I think we just need to be more careful about, or controlled, I don't know, with our expectations on what we think it can do for us.
Is it a word that you hear much sort of around the industries that you sort of operate in, and the offices that you're
for sure. I don't think I've been to a technology conference where it hasn't come up at some point. So it's out there, but to your point, ask people to define it in detail, and I'm not sure they can. I mean, I couldn't, but I think people think it's a bigger opportunity than it is. Yeah. But there are certainly opportunities.
Like, you hear people saying it's going to potentially have as bigger impact, if not a bigger impact, than the internet, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just talk, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm assuming that's people who have got some, financial interest in it. Yeah, I don't see that at all.
Okay. Still interesting nonetheless, though. So 2 more to go. Yep. Let's go for the yellow one.
Okay. Chatbot.
Okay, so Do you enjoy using chatbots? Are you a person who, when you have a chatbot experience as a consumer, as a customer, do you find that experience satisfying?
It depends. Is the pat answer, isn't it? So if I can get a quick answer for a quick question, then I have no issue with chatbots. I think they're an evolving technology. They're going to become more and more useful, and I would not want to sit here and start to stifle their growth, because I think they're going to be really important. So as a user of chatbots, in the right circumstances, I think they're very good and they can be very helpful. When I know they're not going to give me the answer that I want, though, and you just know that it's a more complicated query and you need to get through to somebody, and standing in your way is a chatbot, then they can get frustrating.
Do you think on the whole the customer experience at the moment is more of a like that frustrating end of the scale, rather than the that worked really well, that's something I would use again? Or do you think it's a bit of a mix?
Well, it's a mix, and my personal view is I don't think it's necessarily coming down on the frustrating side, because generally speaking, I would say there's always an alternate channel anyway. You can probably correct me on this, but I'm struggling to think of anywhere where your only option is a chatbot. So actually, if you really don't want to use it, or if you've started using it and it's not giving you what you wanted, then there's usually an email or a phone, or a direct IM to a person rather than to a robot. So no, I don't sense that it's hugely frustrating at the moment. The concern, I guess, is until the technology is up to it, and again, it's a public cultural change as well. Until we are ready to adopt it to that degree, there is a danger that at the moment we have dual channel, or multiple channels, because chatbots by their nature create efficiency within companies. They're potentially going to start to make it more difficult to contact them any other way. They might offer the alternate channels, but you have to go hunting for it, and chatbot's the way to go. And right now, the chatbot experiences that I see probably aren't good enough in all cases to do that. But in the future, in the fairly near future, when we start to make them, we can overlap back onto robotics again, in fact. So, while the chatbot's just answering questions, it gets to the point when you're saying, I know all that, I just want some action. We're not far away from just putting RPA underneath the chatbot, saying you have the conversation, and then you get to the point where you want it to do something for you, and it'll go away and it'll trigger a robot and it'll do it. As long as we can rely on that and it's repeatable and reliable, then that's probably a better experience for a customer.
How far away do you think we are from that reliability?
It depends on the use case.
As well, isn't it?
It is, but it also depends on the case. Who are we putting the chatbot in front of? What do we want it to do? If it's an employee, because these are pervasive everywhere, right? So we can have chatbots for employees, say within a company like BT, which is fairly tech savvy anyway, and we're talking now, in fact, about possibly having, for example, chatbots that can allow people to interrogate the annual leave system and then book leave for them. So where normally it would be logging onto a system, and there's never a person to talk to. It's always a system solution. So lots and lots of clicks on a system, looking at diaries and what have you, and then booking your leave. Or do you just have a conversation with a chatbot? Ask it if you're able. It might have some logic built in that says only X people in your team can take leave at a given time. So it could even look at that, say yes, we see no reason why you can't. Book it, please. Okay, then it will create a message to your manager, who might then have a link to click to open up their chatbot session to then approve the leave or reject it or whatever. I mean, those kind of cases I think we could do now. As I say, we're looking at it already. But that's relatively simple. Having a chatbot as a front end for customers to talk to BT, for example, put it on the BT homepage and say, any customer with any problem, click here and we'll sort it out. I think you need a huge amount of artificial intelligence to be able to understand any given question and route it appropriately, and that's the problem. I think we're quite away from that. But in specific use cases, we can do it today, and in fact should be.
So a company like BT, obviously, as you've illustrated there, you've got opportunities to use this type of technology internally, and also in terms of customer facing. So going forward, do you think it's a big part of the thinking that BT? Obviously, I don't know if you're the right person to speak to about this, but
in terms of BT strategy, I can't say,
no.
But I suspect so. Yeah. But again, personal view, yes. Yeah. I think every big corporation is going to be pushing chatbots. Another interesting question comes up, which I don't have an answer for, but I can I can throw it out anyway. Is how as chatbots become more and more sophisticated, and the natural language processing that sits behind them becomes more sophisticated, does there come a point where we stop telling people it's a chatbot and they think they're talking to a person? As I say, it's a question I'm not going to answer because I don't know the answer, but those are the kind of things we need to... It's not going to be long before we're wrestling with that. Right now, you're talking to a robot.
Even though they humanise them by giving
them
names.
They might give them a name or what have you, but you can tell by the kind of the robotic, if you like, responses.
Yeah.
But there will... I don't think it's far away before we've got sufficient artificial intelligence sitting under the surface to potentially make a decision. Do we tell people this is a chatbot, or do we pretend it's a person on the other end? And will they give a different experience? Are they more polite to a person than a robot? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, this is all kinds of possible implications, obviously. So that's for another day. So I think we'll move on to our last egg. Yeah. The final cracking has occurred.
Yes. Digital disruption.
Well, I like this one because I think digital disruption means different things to different people. What does it mean to you? And is it a term that you like? Is it a term, or do you sometimes think, digital disruption, that's a bit of a buzzword? Yeah,
well, to be honest, it's a little bit of a buzzword, and it's kind of all-encompassing as well. Again, sitting in technology as I do, it's everything we do. Digital disruption is just.
Is it a term that you use internally? Is it disruption? Because disruption as
honestly,
a word is
no.
obviously quite.
We tend to use digital transformation.
Yeah. Which is a bit of a softer kind of...
it feels more progressive. I get why people use disruption, and I think it's very contextual again.
Yeah.
So if you need... Transformation's transformation. It's never easy. It requires, a lot of change management and all of the stuff that we know. But there's still a continuum of what's a small change and what's a big change. So if you know that you have to make a massive change, if your industry is being torn apart by something and it's adapt or die, then probably digital disruption is a good term to use to really explain the magnitude of the challenges that are being faced.
Do you reckon it's sometimes misused in other sort of circumstances where people are talking about doing digital things and initiatives?
I think so. Yeah. So, by its nature, it has to be disruptive. To be disruptive, it has to be big, scary, innovative, transformational. In my mind, at least, there's a whole lot of boxes it has to tick to be called disruptive, and often. We have a digital transformation. We're using technology to transform, and somebody will decide that needs to be called digital disruption when it's as disruptive to people as all change is. But for me, disruption is about brand new cutting edge technologies, disruptive tech, and change is disruptive. That's not enough to qualify for that term.
Yeah. So what do you think the cycle is for digital disruption? Do you think technology will develop at such a rate that we'll continually see new technologies emerge that will disrupt the technology that was previously disrupted?
Yeah, well, for sure. As I said before, I think the pace of technological change at the moment is huge and increasing, showing no signs of slowing down. So I could contradict myself and argue we're going to be in a constant state of disruption, but then if disruption is the norm, is it called disruption anymore? So that's getting on to slightly philosophical questions. But I think, as I say, change is going to be so fast moving and so prevalent for the foreseeable future that to call it disruptive has to be that much more. But I haven't defined it in a dictionary, so I get why people use it.
How do you think people strategize and manage to stay on top of this rapid change that's happening, the disruption, if you want to call it that? It must be such a challenge to exist in the middle of it and try and keep pace with everything that's happening. Is that something you experience?
And that's kind of a cultural thing as well. So I think, without wanting to sound ageist, younger people are more adaptable, I would suggest, and more able to cope with that kind of change because they've been living through it. Yeah. Older people have been used to more stability in the past, and now we're all living in the same world where the pace of change is what it is, and people who have grown up with that are much more familiar with it and comfortable with it. It can be scary.
Well, Leigh, thank you very much. No, that's great. We've covered all the topics and actually some really interesting thoughts from yourself there. So I hope you found that an interesting thing to do as well.
Yes, thank you. Very good.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Power up your day with the Bulletin Brief, the latest news, insights and opinion delivered straight to your inbox. Subscribe now at digitalbullet.in.